Chiapas, Mexico's most southern state, is possibly the poorest state in Mexico. But it has one of the Earth's biological treasures, the last great tropical rainforest of North America, the largest north of the Amazon, one which is now 80% lost. This is the story of Gertrude Blom, an immigrant from the Swiss mountains, and her friendship with a Lacandon Indian whom she met years ago. Together, they have fought to save the dwindling rainforests of Chiapas, Mexico.
I have been coming to the Lacandon jungle in the southern state of Mexico since 1943. I come from the Swiss Alps, and I fell in love with the jungle from the moment I first saw its incredible vegetation of great trees. I was held spellbound by the incredible musical sounds of the insects, from the highest notes to the lowest. And all the hundreds of birds that I had never seen. I didn't feel any fear in the midst of this new environment. On the contrary, I felt quite at home and in my element. I traveled in this fantastic jungle on long and short expeditions, on muleback, on foot, and in dugouts. The jungle filled me with a sense of wonder that has never left me. It has cast a spell over me, and I always return to it. I have seen all this perish. The jungle is burning. The great trees are being destroyed, and the land is enveloped in a sinister darkness. No one cares.
My bitter experience in all the fights for many years is the forest will go, the planet will go, and what I don't care about, the humanity will go. We deserve to disappear.
In the 1940s, Trudi Blom became deeply attached to the small group of Lacandon Maya who were living, as their ancestors had for centuries, in the lowland forests of the Selva Lacandona near the border of Guatemala. Like a fierce old jaguar, Trudi Blom restlessly prowls the fast receding rainforest of the Selva Lacandona. Approaching 90, her voice still has the firmness and passion it had when she first arrived in the mountains of southern Mexico from Europe over 40 years ago. According to author James Nations, she is part journalist, social activist and explorer, part anthropologist, photographer and ecologist, and part legend. Another old jaguar is never far from her side, Chan Quinviejo. He is Trudi's longtime partner in her rainforest struggles, and is the elder member of the small Lacandon community at Lake Nahar. As the group elder, Chankin Viejo is the storehouse and guardian of their fast disappearing culture and religion. Their traditional ways are close to the ancient Maya. The Lacandon Indians are the last direct cultural heirs of the Maya civilization. Trudi Blom has become one of Mexico's most outspoken advocates for Indian rights and for the protection of their tropical rainforest. The meeting of the Swiss immigrant and the primitive Lacandon began a friendship that was to last a lifetime.
I know Chankin since 1943, and I had inevitably a friendship feeling with him. I didn't feel in him a strange person, but an extremely nice and wise person. And I call him father, and he calls me mother. And he says, I hope I will die before you die. And I say, I hope I die before you die. Because if he dies, a lot is going to die with him. An immense memory of things, of forests, of stories, of legends of his. And I would not want to live much longer after the death of Chankin.
Trudi Blom's journeys in the forest and mountains of Chiapas began a world away in Switzerland, where she and her sister were born to a Protestant minister father and a Jewish mother. From the very outset, her views were unorthodox and her manner rebellious. School bored her, and her studies soon gave way to the lure of the rivers and trees. The highly civilized world of her native Switzerland meant little, but animals, books about distant tribes of Indians, and the wonders of nature mesmerized her. The mysterious and beautiful forests of Mexico were to hold a lifelong fascination for her. She began her political involvement at a young age as an organizer and leader of socialist movements fighting fascism in England, Italy, France, Germany, and the United States. She was jailed briefly in Italy, blacklisted in Germany when Hitler came to power, and placed in a detention camp in France for 5 months until her release by the Swiss government. Frustrated by the futility of her struggles in Europe, she left for the United States to raise funds for European refugees.
After I got out of Hitler Deutschland, for a long time I would look back if anybody was following me, which is natural.
Trudi came to Mexico in 1940. As a journalist, she wrote about the women who had worked in the poorest factories of Mexico and became intrigued with the Zapatista women who fought in the revolutionary army of General Emilio Zapata.
Well, I have never taken a picture before I came to Mexico. And I was first on a governmental trip studying factories with a very good woman from the labor department, which were very backward women in those factories. And I got to learn lots of Mexico with that woman. I got also to learn about the Mexican Revolution, Zapata, Emiliano Zapata. And the faces of those women were for me so fascinating that I wanted to keep those faces.
A pledge not to involve herself in political issues was made and almost immediately ignored as she embraced one cause after another. The faces of the Mexican people she saw seemed to recall a past age. To capture their elusive aura, she purchased an inexpensive camera from another immigrant. Using the instruction sheet in the film container, she began her remarkable photographic chronicles, relying on her extraordinary instinct as a guide.
I never photographed, which everybody does with that camera in front of the face, which is not agreeable for people, and is one of the reasons maybe you cannot take pictures in the Indian villages.
In 1943, Trudi made a visit to the Selva Lacandona for the first time. She asked to be assigned to an expedition led by Manuel Castellanos as a journalist and photographer. It was to be the first of over 60 expeditions into the world of the rainforest.
I looked up and suddenly realized a man, one human being, was standing there on a log. I had not seen or heard him come up. He seemed to be part of that log, standing completely immobile and erect and melting into the forest.
From a book written by the French anthropologist Jacques Soustelle, Trudi learned of the Lacandon people. He described them dressed in simple white homespun tunics and hunting with bows and arrows. Gentle, long-haired people living in peace and solitude in the Chiapas rainforest, practicing much of the old ways which they passed from generation to generation. Trudi's meeting with the Lacandon coincided with the beginnings of the destruction of their forest and their Maya way of life. The Lacandon were being invaded by chicleros and landless farmers, campesinos, from other regions of Mexico. Thousands of peasants were moved into the Chiapas lowlands by the Mexican government in a search for land and new lives. Ironically, many were descendants of the ancient Maya who had been forced off the land themselves by the Spanish 4 centuries earlier. After many years in Mexico, salvaging the forest and the Lacandon culture was to become Trudi's personal crusade, a crusade filled with few victories and countless frustrations. It was at this point, in a world already filled with drama, that she met the man who was to make a great impact on her life, cartographer and archaeologist Franz Blom.
So one day a plane came, and I had heard Franz Blom. I knew about his work as Maya explorer, was in Tuzla to go into the jungle. So I ran to that airstrip also, and out of the plane came a tall man with blonde hair, blue eyes, bluer than the sky. And so I went up to him and greeted him and said, "You are Franz Blom?" And he said, "You are Gertrude Tübi." So I asked him, "How do you know?" "Well, everybody talks about you in Tuzla."
Danish-born Franz Blom had first come to Mexico in 1919. He went from job to job, restless, until he secured a position mapping abandoned oil wells. It was in this way that he first encountered the great Maya city known as Palenque.
Franz Blom was the first for the Mexican government to work in Palenque. And he had a sense, he had a nose for everything. He discovered an enormous amount of things.
In the building, known as the Temple of the Inscriptions, he found the floor made of great stone slabs, one of which had a series of holes set in a regular pattern. Clearly, stone plugs had been used to close its openings. 25 years later, when adequate funds were available, archaeologist Alberto Rus lifted the great slab and found a stairway filled with the rubble of centuries. Another 60 feet and several more years of exploration revealed one of the finest Maya tombs ever uncovered, the tomb of Pakal. Trudi was the only woman Franz ever took on his jungle expeditions. In Mexico City, they married and began their search for the funds they needed to explore the Chiapas lowlands. Together, they made countless trips into the rainforest by horse, by mule, and on foot, charting the jungles, fighting malaria, and restlessly seeking out more and more Maya ruins. One of Trudi's proudest accomplishments was the rescue of a stela depicting a Maya ruler, bird jaguar, and his captives. She organized its recovery from a river and its return to its rightful place at Yaxchilan. Franz recorded their finds, ultimately writing a 2-volume work entitled La Selva Lacandona, while Trudi recorded on film a series of photographs that were remarkable for one who professed total ignorance of the photographic process. In 1950, prior to departing on yet another expedition, Trudi and Franz purchased a home in San Cristobal de las Casas. The Indians, not able to pronounce Franz's name, called him Pancho Blom. In Lacandon dialect, Blom means jaguar, so Franz named their house Na Blom, House of the Jaguar.
All you can see out there now, I planted, and under very difficult circumstances, with very bad installation of water. This room was a mill for corn with cement blocks and cement tubes, but we saw immediately it was good for a library.
Originally, the house was a seminary, and in its own way, Na Blom has remained a center for the enrichment of the spirit and the preservation of historical memory. For Franz and Trudi, Na Blom became more than a home. It became an invaluable resource for scholars, visitors, and friends interested in the culture of the Maya. Their relationship was one of mutual devotion and common dedication to the history and fate of the Chiapas Indians. Franz valued her gallantry and affection, and they worked together at Na Blom and throughout Chiapas to the moment of his death on June the 24th, 1963.
He was a very good man. He was a very interesting man, very different from me, which was very good. A man with a high culture and was very handsome.
With Franz gone, Trudi carried on alone, continuing to build Na Blom. Na Blom grew significantly as a center for those interested in studying the plight of the Indians and their rainforest home.
This book was about the Lacandon jungle and the Lacandon Indians.
Volunteers come from all over the world to offer help in support of Trudi's work.
She wanted to visit them.
Trudi stimulates young people to carry on the fight. She knows that we stand in the midst of a war not only for the survival of the rainforest, but for the world itself. And the gravity of the issues leads her to frustration and a manner that is frequently tough and abrasive.
She can show absolutely no regard for other people's feelings, and she can be harsh and tyrannical. But someone once said that if she weren't that way, then she wouldn't have done as much as she has. And I think she is that way because she knows that she's got to be strong if she wants to win any of her fights. She has thoughts of death, and she was thinking about that and saying, well, I'm so tired, I'm tired of my fight, maybe I should just die. And I said to her, Trudi, I think you've got a lot of force left in you. And she said, well, don't you know that's why I'm so terrible? It's because I feel weak now, and I feel that I have to act like that.
I think the most significant thing that I could say about her right now is that Trudi is really a vigilant being. She really watches and takes care of the earth. Always. She's always on duty.
She gives her views to magazines and newspapers, lectures widely, and relentlessly pursues those who can make a difference in the future of the world.
People, I don't know. I get a letter from Australia, I have no idea. How do they know about me? To help them in an action against the destruction of the forest in Queensland. I get letters from Honolulu. I have an exhibit of photographs traveling in the States more than 3 years.
Many of her photographs are included in Bearing Witness, a provocative series of essays written by Trudi and other writers. Now Blom sits on the outskirts of the colonial city of San Cristobal de las Casas in the highlands of Chiapas, Mexico. It was here that Trudi captured on film the Highland Maya that live and farm in the mountains. Robert Laughlin of the Smithsonian Institution has been working with the Xinacantan people for the last 30 years.
Well, in the past, Trudi took a great many pictures of the Highland Indians. I think maybe in the past 10, 15 years, she's done much less of that. She's worked primarily with the Lacandons down in the jungle. Trudi Blom's photography is a very important archive in the area. She took pictures of many festivities, many events in the communities which have been unknown outside of Chiapas and which are now forgotten even by the people of Chiapas. And hopefully a museum will be created which will preserve this material so that the members of these same communities can see their own history.
The scattering of the Maya people took place when the Spanish arrived in southern Mexico in the 1500s. The Indians who lived in the highlands met and intermingled with the Spaniards. The Dominican friars from Spain sought to convert them to Christianity, creating a unique blend of Indian and European ways.
Well, the religion they practice I would call Mayan Christianity, Mayan Catholicism. When the friars came, they taught the Indians the Christian doctrine, and then the Indians accepted what seemed reasonable to them and converted what did not seem reasonable into what might be reasonable.
The people live in the shadow of huge crosses, which were here long before the Spanish arrived. They're associated with rain and corn and symbolize the tree of life as found in Maya carvings and religious cosmology. The crosses are like ancient brooding guardians of a rapidly vanishing past, looming over a community which is gradually being absorbed into the mainstream of the 20th century.
Que vivió con los muchachos.
2 million Maya lived in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras, speaking 30 different languages. Their descendants populate those regions today, but their blood and their ways are mixed with the Spanish. The ecology of this region is at risk, and also the dwindling heritage of the Maya people. Which can be traced as far back as 200 AD. Scholars believe that of the pure-blooded remain only 400 or so Lacandon, who continue to practice the traditional ways well into the 20th century. These few survivors preserve the folklore, cosmology, and morality, rites and practices of their Maya forebears. They alone know how to placate the ancient gods, and they know that when they're gone, the angry gods will destroy the land. Sometime between 700 and 900 AD, for reasons unknown, the Maya civilization faltered and collapsed, and the temple cities were abandoned. The jungle crept in, dominating the landscape and hiding the ruins of this lost Maya world. Today, we see only the remnants of one of the world's great civilizations. Most survivors became forest dwellers, living in thatch-roofed communities near lakes and rivers, never far from the stones of Palenque and Yaxchilan. In the 1500s, the Spaniards arrived, bringing with them smallpox, measles, and influenza, which were to destroy up to 50% of the Maya population before many even saw a Spaniard. In their lust for gold and religious conversion, the conquistadors killed and enslaved as many of the Indians as they could. The Lacandon fled from their pursuers and melted silently into the dim surrounding forest. The Spanish were reluctant to follow. They knew from bitter experience that the forest was an ally to the Indians, with its hidden trails and its dreaded malaria. As a result, the jungle preserved the old ways of the Maya for centuries. The Lacandon remained connected through intermarriage, a common language, and traditional worship. Their primary god was Hakakayum, our true Lord. Today, they're divided into two distinct groups, northern and southern. The southern group at Lacandon have accepted modern ways through the influence of Christian missionaries. The northern Lacandon, more resistant to change, live on the shores of Lake Naha. As the ancient temple ruins lie deserted, so the rainforests may become a tragic relic of man's futile attempts to force the land to produce. The stones of the temple ruins will remain, but if man persists in abusing the forest, it will be gone forever. And as the forests vanish, so do the Lacandon.
Very few people who have an idea what the forest means, not just as beauty, but for the humanity of the world, for the diversity existing. And as long as the big masses cannot understand that, then the forest will go. We have no control of anything we do, and so we destroy the planet. We don't want to destroy it, but we do. I planted trees so much because I thought when I die, that's the part which is very easy to keep.
Near Chamula, the crossers watch over the beginnings of a new forest. The saplings are found throughout the highlands, donated by Trudi Blom. They stand as a testament to her determined commitment to reforestation.
My nursery is for reforestation of the erosion of this highland forest. And the engineer came from those nursery people to show us how to put the seeds in. He brought seeds. He taught my employee, a very good man, and we learned in that short time exactly what to do, which earth and so forth. And when they were ready, those trees here, we went on the radio announcing that we give trees away.
The numbers are impressive. 25 to 30,000 trees planted. Each contributed free of charge from the nursery Trudi Blom established with funds she earned from lecturing to university students and environmental groups around the world. But the devastation of the forest is vast, both in the highlands and lowlands. Alone, Trudi can barely begin to reseed what hundreds of loggers, cattlemen, and farmers destroy each year in an effort to make the land produce a profit.
The rainforest cannot be reforested. It's had to come back alone. But the problem of the rainforest starts here, where the land gets eroded. There are too many people, not enough land. Someone had to do everything to start here and make the people love the tree.
Mexico has the second highest rate of deforestation in the Western Hemisphere. In Chiapas alone, over 139,000 acres of forest were burned in 1 year, and an equal amount ruined. Trudi, more than anyone else, realizes the ultimate futility of her efforts. Yet she continues to do what she can, because in her words, we have to try. There is mounting pressure from private enterprise and government agencies to make the rainforest commercial property. Regarding the Indians as basically uncivilized, government bureaucrats have generally disregarded their rights to the land. Progress, as they define it, is more important, and the land is considered useless and less developed. Chankin resisted government authority to cut the trees around Naha. Asked by government officials to sign logging contracts, Chankin Viejo advised them that the jungle mahogany trees weren't his to sell. "I didn't plant the trees," he said. "They're God's. Go ask him." Hakakayum. God was not available, so the officials appointed his son, young Chankin, Presidente, and obtained his signature in exchange for a pickup truck and a community fund that quickly evaporated. First came the roads. Then the loggers. Then the cattlemen. Soon the hills rattled with the sound of bulldozers, chainsaws, and felled trees. The logging companies reaped millions from the countless mahogany, tropical cedar, and ceiba that they took from the forest. Hakakayum is displeased. The Spanish hunted for gold and slaves. The new intruders are farmers and loggers, and their treasure is land and the magnificent trees of the Lacandon rainforest. Chankin is the last in a long line of tribal elders who have preserved and passed on the traditions and rituals of their people. He is responsible for his people's spiritual welfare and cultural identity. He speaks warmly of the intimate bond that has always existed between the forces of nature and those who live within its system, a bond now being severed by the chainsaws and bulldozers of the forest invaders.
My father was born here, he died here, and so did his father, and they saw many hard things. But they did not have to see the end of the forest as I do. This task has fallen to me, and it is hard, very hard. What the people of the city do not realize is the roots of all living things are tied together. When a mighty tree is felled, a star falls from the sky. When the great trees are cut down, the rain ends and the forest turns to weed and grass. All becomes dry, not only in this heaven, but in the higher heavens above. There is too much cold in the world now, and it has worked its way into the hearts of all living creatures and down into the roots of the grass and the trees.
We come in on roads, and with the road doesn't come the famous progress, comes everything rotten we have most of the time. It's much easier to take the bad thing from another culture than the good things.
What was once the secret refuge of the Maya heritage has become a frontier home of more than 150,000 Mexican immigrant farmers. And more recently have come 70,000 Guatemalan refugees. Cattle are a common sight to the Lacandon. Brahma search for forage where ceiba trees once towered. Modern man may finish what the Spanish were unable to do, eradicate the last pure expression of the Maya culture.
Are the Lacandones diminishing? I said that is not of importance, and I repeat that all the way. What's important is their culture, and what we do with their culture.
Traditionally, the Lacandon hunt and fish in moderation, without driving the creatures of the jungle to extinction. They ask their god, Hakakayum, permission to kill an animal or cut a tree. They recognize thousands of edible, medicinal, and poisonous plants. Most important, the Lacandon create a balance of their needs with the forest's needs. They follow traditional Maya belief that when the trees are cut without the permission of Hakakayum, the sky they're holding up will fall and the world will end again. The Lacandon have through the centuries developed means of making the forest's thin soil produce abundantly, at no risk to the ecological balance of the forest. As farmers, they mimic the forest's growth patterns. They mix and intermingle many crops when planting. Up to 79 different varieties have been found in one milpa, and they allow their farm plots to rest and regenerate so they will produce again. The newcomers are unaware of the Lacandon principles of agriculture. Trees are felled, left to dry, then burned. Seeds are planted among the charred logs and will yield crops for 2 to 3 years. When the nutrients are depleted, the land is abandoned to the cattle. Once the trees have been cut and the vegetation burned, the thin, shallow topsoil and its nutrients are lost, leaving barren land where nothing will grow. Deprived of forest cover, season upon season of rain will bring floods and wash away the soil, lessening yields and speeding the need to clear even more forest land. There is no way to measure the destruction of the rainforest. Plants and animals that have been cherishing the jungle for millions of years are doomed to oblivion. Many, unknown to man, never to be replaced. At the current rate of clearing, the Lacandon forest will be gone by the end of this century. After years of isolation, the walls of the jungle have been breached. The Lacandon can no longer claim the protection it gave them for so long. Change has come to their world. Over clay god pots, Chankin Viejo and Mateo Viejo burn copal incense while praying and chanting to the gods of the lakes and forest in a healing ceremony for Trudi Blom. Leaves are charred in the fires of the god pots and touched to her frail body in the old ritual. They perform these sacred ceremonies in the god house, where Trudi is the only woman allowed. Trudi, more than anyone, realizes the ultimate futility of Chankin's efforts to keep the old religion. He still resists the outside world that has come to take away his children and the trees of his forest.
The culture of the Lacandoners will be gone with the old man Chankin, and he knows it himself. When I asked him one day, do the young people participate in the ceremonies? He said, very few and very seldom. Their new god is the car.
The adult Lacandon have lived through this dramatic wave of change. Their predecessors lived in a world uninterrupted by radios, airplanes, and chainsaws. Where their fathers hunted jaguar with bows and arrows, their children now drive pickup trucks down jungle roads. In a real sense, the Lacandones of today have inherited both the legacy of the ancient Maya and the dubious gifts of the 20th century. One of Chankin's sons, Cayum Max, has become a successful artist and has displayed his paintings in San Cristobal de las Casas at Nabalom. He demonstrates in his paintings respect for his father's memory of ancient folklore, which he uses as the themes in his work. Like others of the tribe, he still wears the traditional white tunic, but in combination with a modern watch and rubber thongs. He speaks Spanish and has learned to read and write. Cayum and his only wife, Victoria, have 3 children. He believes a boy should learn to read and write, or draw and work in the fields. A girl must learn to cook with her mother. Chankin Viejo has had 3 wives, all named Co. Co 1 died. The others live with him still. The wives have borne Chankin more than 20 children. The aged Chankin has long understood the unhappy fact that even members of his own family have fallen victim to the thirst for profit. In this hut, his firstborn son, Presidente, runs what might be called a convenience store in the jungle, serving the loggers and cattlemen who destroy the land of his forebears.
Now everything changes. My sons make bows and arrows to trade for bullets and batteries for their phonographs. They sell our sacred drums to the foreigners. They are very interested in money. This is not all pleasing to Hakakayum, and that is why he destroys the world.
The memories of the singing birds, the exquisite colors of the vegetation, and the beautiful rivers come back to my mind like echoes from the past. And the only thing that remains for me to say is that the time has come for us to wake up to what we are doing and take steps to stop this destruction. Let's think about the future, or else we are going to be the last species left on this planet. I have published many articles which have appeared in newspapers and journals, and I've given many talks on radio and television. I have taken many photos that show the problem in a much more dramatic way than words ever can. and I have given these to government officials. But now, I must ask myself, what is the point in all this effort? None of my efforts seem to have wakened people up and made them do something concrete about this disaster. It is well known what is happening. We're already suffering the terrible consequences of our irresponsibility toward nature. We have upset the ecological equilibrium and are experiencing torrential rains, water shortages, and excessive heat, all because we haven't stopped to appreciate the marvelous environment in which we live. We only sought to exploit it, and have finally exhausted it. And how well we have done it.
Although the culture and the Selva Lacandona are fading, Trudi's love for the Lacandon world is evident in this setting. She is the uncontested queen of the Lacandon, Reina de la Selva, a title she earned in the 50s and 60s. But since then, the world of the forest, where Trudi Blom was crowned, has changed. In Trudi's words, she seems to be unable to grow old gracefully and accept the failures of her life. My life, she says, is full of lost battles, and the trouble is the spirit of the fight is still in me.
What shall I do with him? That's the majadero numero uno. He's the son of...
Underneath her extravagant willfulness is a caring heart. She enjoys playing mother hen to the Lacandon, chastising, counseling, and joking with them. They know her sternness is tempered with love and affection. Ensuring the survival of the Lacandon has been one of Trudi's primary missions. And although success has been elusive, she has left an important legacy in her memorable photographs. The composure and beauty of the Lacandon people is preserved forever, and so, sadly, is the record of the forest's destruction. Her evocative images have captured and commemorated for all the great spirit of these rare people.
I am old enough to die tomorrow. I would like this last image of my camp and those people. So, I come here when I'm fed up with life. And then when I come with that kind of people. But I'm too old to go on like this. It's stupid. There are too many old people in this world. I'm ready to go. I like the planet too. It's ready to go. So that's what it is. So different we may seem, and different we are, but we have the same feeling for the world, maybe, and the same love for the tree and what's around us. So it's natural, this friendship.
When this world ends, there will be a new and better one, but not for us. When we die, we will go to the dark heaven of the lesser gods, where there is no sun, no trees, no water. It is the punishment of Hakakayum, because we have turned our backs on the gods and neglected our traditions.
And, well, okay, adios. Sounds like.
Trudi Blom and Chankin Viejo are tired, and at the end of the long series of battles they have fought together. Both foresee the tragedy that is to follow. Both hope that somehow a new world will be nourished from the exhausted soil of the old.
Funding for this production was made possible by the Texas Committee for the Humanities, Mrs. Rorick Cravens, Louisa Studi Saufim, Association for Community Television, Cato Foundation, Mr. and Mrs. Harris Masterson, Barbara and Gerald Hines, and other contributors.